From 13 WREX, this is 13 Cares.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeannie Hayes. We all know children in our lives, and we all hopefully wish the best for them, but unfortunately there are many children, even in our own community, who are dealing with abuse. So we have Kathy Pomahawk now here from the Carrie Lynn Children's Center. This is an issue that you guys know all too well. It's terrible that it's happening, but a lot of kids are dealing with this every day.
Absolutely. It's very prevalent in our community. And I want people to understand that it is happening. It's easy to decide that maybe it isn't happening or to close your eyes to it, but it absolutely is real.
So let's first start out with the types of child abuse that there are, because there are three major types, and I think we all have an image in our mind of, a terrible parent who's yelling and out of control, but it's so much more than that. There are a lot of different ways that the abuse can happen.
Yeah, there are technically three types of abuse. It would be sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect. At the center, we primarily deal with child sexual abuse and severe physical abuse. Okay. We take all cases of sexual abuse and the most severe physical abuse cases.
Are those easier to spot than neglect?
Yes, perhaps. Certainly, the abuse cases that we see usually start with a disclosure from a child, more easily identified maybe disclosure, where neglect is definitely more ambiguous and doesn't always come with real defined edges. So those are the cases that are generally referred to us.
What age of child is this most likely to come with, as far as when you get that actual admission, like, yes, this is happening? At what age are kids willing to speak up?
Absolutely. The median age for child abuse across the nation is 9 years old, and that would hold true for the center. Most of the kids are around that age range. We do serve 0 to 17 at the center, and we do see 0 to 17, from very young children who are pre-verbal all the way up to almost adulthood. We see about 600 kids a year at the center, so generally speaking, they're in that age range, though, about 9.
Now, I wonder, are teenagers more willing to speak up about these issues, or at that point have they been through it so long that it's just, because I know it's a control issue, and at that point do they feel so intimidated that they feel like they can't speak up?
Yeah, well, it's a very difficult thing to talk about, obviously, especially if it's someone that you love and trust most in the whole world, to tell that it's happening, and especially if it's been going on. Some of the older kids that we see could have been enduring abuse since they were very little, and there may have been some pivotal moment in their lives or in what happened to them that they decide to speak. Generally, what we see is that if an older child has come forward with something that's happened to them and it's the first time they've talked about it, it's because there's a younger sibling in the home. Gotcha. And they're protecting that younger sibling. Suddenly they realize that that child could be a target as well, and they feel a sense of responsibility to their sibling to tell what's been happening to them, hopefully to protect them.
Now, if abuse is happening in the home, do you find that it's typically from a parent, or is it sometimes like a close family friend?
Typically, the most of our cases are usually a parent or a step-parent or a paramour to the parent that's living in the home. Almost in every situation, though, it's important for people to remember that this is somebody kids know. I think we all have it in our minds that it's a stranger, somebody who might lurk behind the bushes,
in the shadows.
Right, that might come in and sweep in and take your child and do something horrible to your child. That happens, and we do see that, but most often it's somebody they know, somebody in their home, someone that they've worked with, maybe a leader in terms of sports or church, or it's the people that they know and have access to your child.
And not only the people you know, but the people you trust the most.
That's right. That's right. That's why it's important to know who your children are around.
Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the warning signs, because there are several things that you can look for, because we should all be looking for this in every kid we know, right?
Absolutely.
Because they may not be speaking up. They may not even know that it's wrong.
And that's very true. Children don't, if it's something that's been incorporated into their daily life, perhaps as a game, or it's something that has happened every single day, for them to identify that it's wrong, you're right, is not always easy. Usually what I tell parents is there's no one definitive warning sign. That's why it's so hard. Any one thing that I'm going to talk about could be an indicator of many things, but it's usually a severe change in behavior. Okay. So, a child that doesn't ever experience any kind of sleeping problem suddenly is having nightmares and is really scared, or a child who is generally pretty easygoing always all of a sudden has some sort of increased levels of anxiety or depression. Extreme changes, is what you're looking for, that might pair with something that is going on with that child's life. Certainly, if you're sending your child somewhere on a daily basis and it's going okay, and suddenly they don't want to go there, that should indicate to you that something's not right. It could be something else, but it's certainly something that you should be watching for and thinking about.
Interesting. Okay, the second thing you say is look for physical injuries or things like bedwetting or headaches or mood changes.
Absolutely. Anything that's abnormal for that child, anything that might indicate that is something unusual going on that would alarm you or give you a red flag. I think the thing that's important for parents is they need to trust their gut. You know your child better than anybody else does. And if you see something that's not right, you need to be asking. You need to be saying, you know, what's going on?
That gut feeling is a lot smarter, I think, than we give it credit for.
That's right, right. And we have a second sense, and I think, you know, you're right, we don't always give that any credit or credence, and we really need to.
And it's not like you need to, you know, it's not like if your gut says something's wrong, you immediately go out accusing everybody, but that might be at least a sign that you need to go out and look into it a little bit.
We can't jump to conclusions. Of course, there's many things that could be going on, from a bad grade in school to different things that our teachers, or, you know, there's so many things that go on in children's lives and people that touch children's lives. But at the same time, if we don't trust our gut and we close our eyes to it, you may be that child's only line of defense. You may be giving that child the only opportunity they have to talk. And if you don't ask them, they may never tell. You know, they say that less than 10% of children will ever tell they're abused.
Really?
So, you know, and when you look at the numbers that we see at the center, that's a pretty scary thing if that's only 10%.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge.
So
now, if your child, say for example, has an activity like you mentioned and suddenly doesn't want to go, as a parent, what should your next step be? Do you question the child, and how do you get them to actually tell you?
I would absolutely talk to your child, but it doesn't start there. It should have started earlier. You need to have that communication with your child from the beginning. You need to be talking to them about who are safe people in their lives that they can tell, or, you know, what they should do if they're ever scared or they're uncomfortable. You need to be opening that line of communication so that when the occasion, if the occasion ever arises where you sense something is wrong and you approach your child, they're not going to be surprised. You know, you're not taking them off guard. You've already opened that conversation.
They're not going to feel as defensive.
Right, right.
I gotcha. The third sign you say to watch for as a warning sign is if the child is always watchful. Explain that. Suddenly
the child has become increasingly vigilant about what's going on around them. Where usually if you had a child that, you know, is pretty easygoing and adjusts to all situations without much concern and, you know, transitions well, suddenly that child is not that way. They show anxiety. They want you around everywhere they go. They're afraid to leave the house. They're watchful of everything that goes on around them. Then that tells you that something's not right. Something has disturbed them or scared them in some way.
Gotcha. And the fourth one you say is if they're overly passive or withdrawn.
Yes. Well, and that goes with the depression stuff. If suddenly you have a child that, you know, usually, you know, is pretty outgoing and pretty even-keeled, and they withdraw into themselves, it's a way of protecting themselves. It's a protection mechanism where they can, you know, if they can keep themselves safe by you know, closing up and not talking to anybody, and, you know, then they're going to do that. And suddenly, you know, you notice that they're not reaching out as much and scared to do anything. And
yeah, if you've ever seen the movie Precious, I think that's a good example of that. She actually has these fantasy, you know, thoughts that she kind of escapes into just to get away from the abuse because it's so severe. And so, you know, you do what you can to defend yourself, even if that means just pushing reality out.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we need to take a quick break, but we want to talk next about some of the health effects. Obviously, physical abuse has an immediate physical impact, but beyond that, the effects of this abuse can be really long-lasting. We have information on your screen, too. And we'll show you this throughout the show. If you suspect any sort of abuse in a child that you know, you can call DCFS at 1-800-25-ABUSE. Contact the Carrie Lynn Children's Center at 815-319-4150 or go online to carrie-lynn.org. We'll be right back.